Welcome to episode 50 of In Light of the Gospel. I'm excited today about the work that my next guest is doing. His name is Mark Elias. He's from Manitoba. I've never met the guy. Just now through Zoom we met briefly and I got to hear his story, and you'll be able to hear the same. His upbringing, his childhood, his Mennonite heritage is quite a bit different than mine, and the way he came to faith was a little different than many of the guests that I've had on the show. But the work he's doing now in bringing the gospel to prisoners in Canada is the part that really amazes me. He's got a passion and a joy to see people saved, to see people understanding the Old Testament correctly, understanding the gospel correctly. And he's using the Good and Evil book through No Greater Joy Ministries to get it into the prisons. He's been sending it into the wardens of chaplains rather, of these prisons, and they're handing out books by the box loads. And he's getting skids and skids of these boxes or books shipped to him in Manitoba, and then he's delivering them all over Canada. So it's a really neat story, and I'm really excited about the work that he's doing. Hopefully some of you will be able to participate in it, helping contribute maybe money, or maybe you can start sending out these books yourselves. He's setting it all up so that he could start shipping boxes of books to people who are interested in participating in this ministry. So thanks for tuning in, and hopefully you'll go and support Mark and his ministry in Manitoba. God bless you. Talking to Mark Elias from Manitoba. I don't know the guy personally yet, but I had a recommendation that I talked to him, and I'm really looking forward to it. He does something that I very much appreciate. He's been taking the No Greater Joy, Good and Evil books by the skid loads from the pictures that I saw anyway, and I'm curious to know more about that, and getting them into some of the prisons there in Manitoba. Is that right?
That's right. Actually, prisons across Canada.
Across Canada, okay.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, now that we're on that topic, I don't mind touching on that a little bit. I remember for years I always thought in the States you can get into prisons pretty easily to go and minister and preach and do things. And in Canada, it sounds much more difficult. Like you can't just go walk into a prison somewhere and start preaching. They don't just allow anybody in, right? And so
That is,
how difficult is the procedure getting in?
to tell you the truth, all I know is from what I've heard. I have never stepped foot in a prison
Okay.
because our whole ministry model doesn't have anything to do with physical presence there. All of our correspondence is by email and by phone, and us sending what we send, which we'll tell you about.
Yeah, very nice.
So, but I hear it's a lot of hoops to jump through, and which is the nice thing because I can minister to all across Canada and not have to travel, beyond my desk where I'm sitting.
Yeah, well, that was the beauty of the whole No Greater Joy, Good and Evil project altogether, right? When I talked to JD Grimes and how he's reaching millions of people through the
Exactly.
online version of it, right? So very cool. My parents were born, not my parents, my grandparents were born in Manitoba. My parents were born in Mexico, and then they moved back to Manitoba. So my second two brothers were born in Manitoba, one in Morden and one in Brandon, I believe it was.
Okay.
And then they moved to Ontario. The rest of us were born here in Ontario. But what is your family background like? Did you guys do the moving around too, or have you guys always been Manitobans?
No, and I really got to give a little bit of fair warning. I've been listening to a few of your video podcasts, and so I have a little bit of your story, as well as I listened to your JD Grimes interview the other day. So while milking, so I'm a little bit more up to speed of your background and so on. But my background is more, I don't know if the word is liberal, but less conservative.
Okay.
And so I think my dad grew up, I think it's the Rhineland Church.
Yeah.
And I grew up going to a Sommerfeld church for 10 years. And then my parents were part of a group of families that started a new non-denominational church in Morden, which is about 7 miles from, they started in Winkler, which is about 7 miles from Morden.
Okay.
There are big differences in the communities there. Winkler is much more Mennonite and religious, but Morden doesn't have that kind of heritage. Morden is much more secular. They have a British background. So very different towns, very close to each other. But I grew up not nearly with a conservative Mennonite culture directly in my family, in my church, but it was all around me.
Okay.
So I knew, there are all these flavors of conservative Mennonites, the Rhinelanders and the Sommerfelders, the Old Colonies, the the Mexican Mennonites, which I don't know how many denominations they have. So I'm aware of it, but I don't know the nuances and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
So, for example, like I say, I grew up in the Summer or 10 years in the Sommerfelder Church where they had things like catechism and so on. But by the time I was a young adult in this, what's the Winkler Mennonite Church, I think they used the catechism, but it wasn't nearly as strictly learn it, memorize it, be interviewed by it on your day of baptism or whatever the procedure is. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So they wouldn't have appeared to be conservative. They didn't wear the dresses and the head coverings and all that kind of stuff.
Not nearly so. No, I think some in the Sommerfeld Church, for example, still wear a duke and so on. But
Mm-hmm.
in this non-denominational church I grew up in, there was none of that.
Well, you,
No.
you use the word Duke pretty casually there, so I'm assuming you spoke Low German then as well?
I can speak Low German. I didn't know it very well. My dad and my uncles spoke it in the farm shop. And then
Okay.
in my early 20s, I went to Paraguay and Bolivia for a month. And I'll tell you, I got off the plane, and these relatives that came to pick us up, this young man, he's my age, and he realized I couldn't speak two sentences of Low German, and his face just fell. But after 2 weeks there, I could carry on conversation, and a lot of what was in my head um, started coming out of my mouth. It
Yeah.
was all in there. Just had to learn how to put the words together, and I had a Low German dictionary, so I could get along pretty good. And now I can speak it, I'd say, conversationally with some trouble.
There you go. Yeah,
So
I think you've probably heard me say then too. I grew up, born and raised in Canada, so I never really had to speak Low German. Where a lot of relatives that I had, they would go back and forth to
yeah,
Mexico, and so they were quite proficient at Low German. And then some very strict parents would make sure you have to speak German, right? And my parents were a little bit too easy on that, maybe. So
yeah,
I rarely spoke it. Now, if I have to in a conversation, I can, but very quickly I come up against some tough things, thoughts that just don't want to formulate into
yeah.
German words. So
What I find interesting is there are still families who, let's say my age, in their 30s, 40s, who grew up, let's say, speaking mostly English, going to public schools and so on. But they, as parents, are specifically making sure they speak Low German in the household so that their children still know it, which is
yeah,
commendable
yeah.
because it's not.
I kind of wish we would have done that, but our oldest children are now 20, 18, 16, right? And so it's like,
Yeah,
man, it's tough because I would have to force my mind to think about it, German
yeah,
constantly. So
yeah.
very
So
nice. Well, I mean, what was childhood like then? What, you had a happy-go-lucky kind of lifestyle? Did you grow up on a farm already or no?
I grew up on a grain farm. Yes, life was pretty good. I was not involved with a whole lot of, or let's say, any sports, for example. My dad said, "No, we have farm work to do. We don't need to drive to town to play baseball."
Don't need fake
Um,
exercise.
stuff like that. No, now we didn't have livestock, so there wasn't that rigid daily schedule of animals. There was more like the seasonal rhythm of springtime planting, spraying, harvest, and
Gotcha.
so on. I grew up working on the farm quite a bit. I liked it. I was a bit more of a high stress kid where almost the stress of seeding and harvest would almost get to me. And since as
Mm.
an adult, I've just kind of chilled a little bit and more go with the flow. Um, there was a fair bit of church involvement. I went to Sunday school and a little bit of youth group. And we had, for a number of years, a Wednesday night kids club program, which confused me because I think it was kind of a community outreach type of thing. But to me, it was like Sunday school on Wednesday. Just more Bible verses to learn and more
Yeah.
activities, more songs. It was the same thing. I thought it was redundant, but that's what I grew up with. And for the most part, it was pretty good. But I had quite a bit of an attitude growing up that there are things that I didn't grow up with in my immediate social circle or say family. Um, things like, well, let's say some worldly stuff like drinking, smoking. It wasn't like some kind of verboten thing. It was just not done. It was a
Okay.
waste of money, waste of time, waste of lifestyle. And there were some things as a young man I wanted to try. And if I think back on it now, definitely just about everything I tried was a waste of time and money.
So
Uh,
the tradition that held you from it had a lot of truth to it.
it had a lot of truth to it, and I wish my parents would have said, "Yeah, you know what? Drinking in itself isn't terrible, but it'll have repercussions now and
Hmm.
later.
That's
You
right.
can get into stuff that's just regrettable. Just the amount of, like I say, time and money I've spent on such um, is just poor.
Hmm.
And I wish I would not have done those things. And there are definitely some consequences that still apply to me to this day. Had I not gotten into those things, it
So
wouldn't affect me
you would have gotten into some of those things then in your teen years or later on.
now. Actually, almost later, as a young man, when I moved out of the house, I think I moved out when I was about 19 or 20.
Okay,
I actually got into computer education stuff and worked at an office building or an office for 3 years in Winnipeg.
I see.
So, and here's the opportunity to kind of do those things that I wanted to do.
Completely separate from your natural community and all that.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and yeah. I
So
go to church. Go ahead.
those early years when you were raised with a lot of church and work and all that kind of stuff, was there much personal thought of God, or was it more just this is what we do, or was there like a guilt or associated with a wrongdoing and that kind of thing, or how sensitive was your conscience early on?
I grew up with a concept of God, of Jesus. If I try to think of it, if I ever, let's say if we go to the salvation question, do you believe in Jesus, that he's the son of God, that he died for my sins? I knew and believed all those things. Did I
Mm-hmm.
confess him as Lord? No, that was a conscious choice I didn't do,
Mm,
because I didn't want to confess him as Lord yet. And not that I thought I'd be severely restricted, it just wasn't where I wanted to. Ultimately, I was still saying I was Lord. I wanted to control, I wanted to
I
make
see.
those choices. Trying to remember your questions. Um, there wasn't a bunch of strict rules like you've got to do this, you can't do that. It was more like we don't do those kinds of things. Church on Sunday was something we always did. It wasn't ever an attitude of you have to do this to be saved or you have to be so and so good to be saved. That whole concept of the fear or the uncertainty of salvation isn't quite something I grew up with, and I know is very common in the more conservative faiths,
Mm-hmm.
but that wasn't a part of my church experience or my, I'd
Right.
say, religious experience. So that hasn't ever been a stumbling block for me.
Gotcha.
It's a huge hindrance, those, boy, look at the rest of the world's religions where that's basically have I been good enough
Yeah.
and so on. It's what speaks huge to the Buddhists because they they're always unsure too.
Yeah, I mean most people that I talk to, depending on how conservative they were raised, they usually have some testimony of going to bed scared at night because their parents had no confidence, their parents had no joy in this, but they said if there's any hope, it's this and you better be good, right? And so that, they're afraid of thunderstorms, they're afraid of darkness, they're afraid of, signs in the sky, like that's how they live their life, just in that they'll live free, carefree enough when they're with friends, but they get alone, they get in the dark, they get in a quiet moment, and all of a sudden they get scared. And I found myself, after I got saved, I looked back and I thought, man, there was very rarely a moment of silence and contemplation in my life. I would go from one set of noise to another, jump in the car, turn the radio on, drive somewhere, talk to people. Like there was never just what is the world like? What is the purpose of things? What happens when we die? I just wouldn't go there, right? Whereas some people went there and they were terrified. So,
Well, no, so I'll say I did not have that, I'd say, religious burden of unsure.
yeah.
Like you say, being scared of God's going to strike me with something. That wasn't there. And I grew up sitting on the tractor, probably harrowing by the time I was 8 years old. So I had time to sit and think. I didn't listen to the radio all the time until I was probably, well, for a few years. So no, I had some time to sit and think and there were concepts like the concept of eternity. I don't think our mind is able to comprehend that. So I've just
Yeah.
given it over to, well, heaven's a good place, or not just a good, but is the place to be. And so if I'm confident in that, I got nothing to worry about.
There you go. So then the idea of doubting God's existence didn't really sink in either. It was just, there was an obvious truth to you.
That was pretty obvious, and the farm teaches that too, because you see God's creation around you every
Yeah.
moment, and there's not nothing there really to doubt.
Okay. There you go. So you went off to the big city of Winnipeg and started living your own free life, working in an office, you said?
Yep.
And found a bunch of new friends, or did you have people that you went there with?
I had friends I know from high school. I went to a private Christian high school in Gretna for 3 years. And so there were friends who moved to Winnipeg for either school or for work. And so I had those friends and they were good friends. I mean, they, they went with me on these escapades. And the turning point came when I was taking someone for a motorcycle ride, which which I love doing in the city. And I'd have these friends from high school or various friends from high school say, "I'd like to go for a ride sometime. You know, take me for a ride." So it doesn't always hurt, taking someone for a ride. And I was talking to this girl about just what I did for fun, and she said, "Yeah, I used to do that, but it's not interesting anymore." And I couldn't compute that. What it means, not, it is interesting. I love doing this. I love going out, the club and music and having a few drinks and so on. And but over the next few months, I started asking myself, is this fun? And it just became less and less fun.
Interesting.
And after a little few months of that, somebody invited me to church. And so I started going to a church, and within the first 2 or 3 weeks, they were saying we're going to have a baptism course, and this isn't some 6-month baptism class like I was used to in the Mennonite church. This was a maybe 4-session class on what is actual baptism. Why would you get baptized? What's the example in Scripture? So I went out of curiosity because I wanted to know what their take on it was. And next thing you know, I'm sitting at a street light driving back to Winnipeg from the farm, sitting at a street light one night in traffic. And the Lord said to me, "Well, Mark, you've had your fun. You know what you can come up with. I made the whole world. You can see what I've come up with. You want to continue on your program or do you want my program?" And I said, "I can't do all that well. I've done quite a bit, but it doesn't compare to the creativity of God and the power of God and that authority and everything." I said, "I'm in." And right there at the stoplight, I didn't say some prayer, nothing. It was just this choice: Lord, I'm in. You are now Lord of my life.
Wow. I mean, the concepts, the gospel, that was all there from pretty young on. You understood what Christ had done, but now it was like, okay, interesting.
Yep.
And what changed at that point then?
Not much.
Okay.
Not much. I started going to church more often, but I didn't go to church because that's what Christians do. I went to church because I wanted to learn more. I wanted that exposure, that community. And so I started going to a church. This church I was invited to had, I bet you half the church was under 30 years old. So
Okay.
tons of young unmarrieds, newly marrieds, and so a lot of peers, and basically made a new set of friends. And the old ways and the old friends slowly, definitely the old ways went by the wayside, and some of the friends just because we didn't have mutual interests anymore.
That was when the clubbing and the party lives kind of just dropped off.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Nice.
Yep.
And so how long were you in Winnipeg then?
So that was 3 years total, and
Okay.
probably the last year and a half was with this life in Christ.
How did your parents respond then? You go off to the city and you come back kind of a new man, or was it not that obvious to them?
Oh, it would have been obvious. They didn't ever ask details about my social lifestyle. I think they had clues.
Mm-hmm.
No, I do wish that earlier in life or even then they would have said, "You're making these and these choices. I don't think they're good for you. I think these are going to be some of the effects you're going to suffer from." And but they didn't say stuff like that. But when I was baptized, there was no question that they came to Winnipeg to the church for my baptism. They encouraged me in subtle ways. Um, so there was nothing negative, only positive, I'd say,
Yeah.
in a subtle sense.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like by far the majority of men that I've talked to, whether they're from my type of old colony Mennonite or the few that I've talked to that are from like Old Order or Amish, almost all of them have huge disruptions in their families. They're often the first or the second one to become Christian, and
Right.
it's this huge disruption to, now we're leaving the old ways, and I'm going to start reading the Bible for myself, and so on and so forth. But when you're a little bit more liberal, quote unquote, I don't know if that's the right term really, but more allowed to look into the scriptures, and you're not so held to these old traditions, it's not quite as disruptive to the family.
No, and I'm fortunate because even my dad was the kind of guy who liked to read for himself. He
Okay.
told a story that when he was studying catechism to be baptized, and I'm not sure who came to the house. Maybe one of the alts does, and a deacon or something came, and they're talking to him and interviewing him and answering questions and so on. He says when they were leaving, one said to kind of to the other as they're putting on their jackets, "Man, that guy asked more questions than all the others combined." And my point is, my dad was often much more of an out of the box thinker in terms of farm stuff, technology stuff. So he had no problem with me reading the Bible, asking questions, discussing, saying, like, it says
Nice.
this, well, we grew up that, what's the problem? Or that was a good part of my upbringing.
There you go. And you have several siblings, or?
Yes, I have two older sisters, a younger brother.
Okay. Right on. So, what brought you back then? You went back to the Winkler area. Is that where you're from now?
Yes, Winkler Morton area, yes.
Okay.
Well, one day my dad said, Mark, I'm planning on working on my retirement, getting out of farming. I can sell you the land, or you can come home and farm it. What's it going to be? And I said, we'll come home.
There you go.
And I felt no obligation. I would have had no problem or he would have had no problem with selling if that's what I chose. But I worked it was a 10-minute walk from where I lived to my office building downtown. And many, many days I was walking home and I thought, wow, what a beautiful day. Where did this day go? Where was I? And I look back and I was in that building.
That tall building over there.
And so, yeah, riding motorcycle took the edge off that because you can go
Yeah.
outside. But I mean, I didn't mind walking in minus 30 degree, to work and all. That didn't scare me. I like the outdoors. And
Yeah.
so this opportunity to come back to the farming, I just took at it.
Okay. So you would have met your wife somewhere around that time, probably?
Whew.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah,
can give
actually
me the
with
condensed version.
Okay, no, the condensed version. So a few months into coming home, my parents decided to build a house in Winkler, and my brother and my dad and I took on basically roughing up the house. And in the middle of that, not he, a friend of mine was going to be married. He went to a Bible school in British Columbia.
Okay.
So this friend of mine from high school is getting married. He invites me out. Uh, a different friend of mine rode out motorcycle to the wedding in Edmonton. And so being involved in the wedding party, I was paired up with a young lady from Oregon. And you got your motorcycle there. You got to invite the bridesmaids for a ride. So the next day we went riding motorcycle a little bit. And my conclusion was nice girl, but she lives very far away. And I wasn't interested in anything long distance. And a couple of years later, these friends who were married brought her back out as a birthday gift, this friend of mine for his wife. And they invited me to join them for one afternoon of this trip out. And this girl that I was involved in the wedding party with, Katie, she had been recently been to Africa. And so
Okay.
she brought a DVD with photos of that, and we watched it with the four of us. And she forgot her DVD at my house, and so she was leaving the next day. I couldn't return it. I wrote a letter and sent the DVD back, and we started writing. And in the
There you go.
meantime, she went to India for a number of months, and we were corresponding. And the next, probably 6 months later, we decided to start courting, and within a year, we were married.
Wow. And
So
so her trips to India and Africa were mission related.
yes, they were mission related. The trips to India, she was teaching English at a Bible school. And at one point, when recording, she invited me to join her. So I went there for 2 months and I stayed at the Bible school in part of the residence there, and saw her from a different point of view, which is good. And we were engaged there, and then we were married a few months later.
Okay.
But yeah,
Very nice. I mean, you use the term courting. I would find that around here, most of the more liberal Mennonites, if we're going to use that term again,
Okay.
liberal, the idea of courting would be very foreign. That's only among the very conservative, where they would, respect that whole system and try to kind of, we're getting together to get married and so on and so forth. Were you part of a fairly conservative church at this point?
No, actually, ironically, as part of a very liberal church that I
Okay.
went to in Winkler.
Maybe you're
But
not referring to courting the same way that I'm thinking
maybe
of
not.
referring.
I think the 80s, the 70s and 80s version would be called, I think what they called going steady,
Okay.
which means almost nothing to me. But it's that difference between you're just going out for coffee with this girl and
Yeah.
two of you with that girl, and it's very casual.
It's
But
official.
now, I'm sorry,
Now it's official.
it becomes official when you start only focusing on one person
Yeah.
with the effort of getting to know, not just getting to know them, but intending to get to know them so well that, do you really want to marry this person?
Nice.
And that's where that starts entering that whole conversation. I mean, you're a married man, you know a little bit what
Yeah.
road you go down.
Very nice. So
Um,
within a year, you're married.
yeah, it was good. It was very good.
Excellent. And then she moved up to Manitoba right away?
She did, yeah. She actually is half Canadian, so that part was very easy. And but that was it's a big change.
Okay, I can imagine. How about culturally? Was there a major difference between you and her?
I would say to some extent, yes. Her parents, her dad grew up somewhat Mennonite, and so
Oh, okay.
she's aware of some of the customs, some of the foods, that kind of thing. And so there's been a lot of observation and learning. Sometimes you hear about stuff and then you experience it, and it's a lot stronger when you experience it. Um, but there has been some learning curve, but it hasn't been like a total foreign concept.
Gotcha.
And
Very.
plus, sorry, yeah,
No, no. What were you going to say?
I think because we're not a very conservative Mennonite, it's also not nearly the jump as it would be as
Yeah.
if she yeah would have been married into something much more
I
conservative.
met a couple, and I had the guy on the podcast here too from Alberta, and he
Yep.
married a native girl in Alberta, and she
Oh
actually
boy.
completely went Mennonite for him. She put the
Okay.
dress on, the head covering, she learned Plotdich, and she just joined right in. They've come out
Wow.
of it now, having been
Okay.
liberated through the gospel, but she went the whole 9 yards with him, right? So it was quite
Well,
something.
that's I'm impressed.
Yeah, I had never met someone like that before.
No.
So, if you don't mind, then what brought you to the point of No Greater Joy, or Good and Evil, and that type of ministry? Or maybe I'm jumping ahead too fast. I
No,
don't know.
that's fine. That's fine. So well, we had friends who got the No Good or Joy magazine. So we would, I think we were also by then subscribed. We read the articles. We're aware of some of the books. I think we read some of the books that they'd written, that the Pearls had written. And of course, in the magazine, they talk about their prison ministry, their light bearer ministry. And so we had contemplated, I don't know if you know at all how the light bearer ministry works.
I'm not very familiar with it.
Not really. Okay, so let's say from the point of view of No Good or Joy, here they've written this great comic book, Action Bible, which is a great ministry tool to reaching people who, let's say, don't have any Bible knowledge, don't know much about God, and everything's mostly, let's say, cultural stereotypes, that kind of thing. And it's in a format that's super easy to read, which is fantastic for the prison population. So let's say from the point of view of No Good or Joy, how do we get this to prisons, and how do we team up with people? Because this is going to cost a lot. So what they do is, let's say you as a family, an individual, a youth group, some kind of group, you say, you know what, we want to help send out good and evils. So you basically choose a state that you want to, like a state whose prisons you want to support.
Mm-hmm.
So you go in and you buy, let's say, some boxes of good and evil books. You tell No Good or Joy, you want to send out so and so many copies per month. We can afford 1, 2, 5, 10, that kind of thing. And then they send you pre-printed mailing labels for individuals from those prisons that have asked for a copy. And then you are placing the copy you purchased in your own mailing envelope, and you pay for postage to that prison.
Okay, that way they're paying to ship the bulk order to you, but you have to still contribute by getting it.
Well, even there, you're paying for that box of books.
Right.
That's not for you do get prison pricing, so I think they retail at $25 a copy, but back then, let's say their price is maybe more like $5 US.
Yeah.
So you're getting basically at cost pricing, which is a big help. And they're also distributing a lot of or spreading a lot of that work of distribution around. So we were aware of this, and we're down close to the U.S. border, relatively close, and we fairly often go down into the United States to pick up packages. You know, shipping to
Yeah.
Canada is expensive, to the U.S. it's cheap. There are depots all along the border in little towns
We
that
do the
people.
same.
There you go. Yeah. And we said, well, maybe we could get a case or two of books shipped there and keep it at the depot. We were friends with the depot owner and take on a facility in the States and send out copies accordingly. And we also asked No Good or Joy, so do you have anything like this set up in Canada? And they said, no. You want to start one? And we said, nope, maybe.
No,
Sure,
I want someone else to, right?
let's give it a try. So we bought a few cases. So this is now in 2017. We bought a few cases. I think my records show 4 cases, which so say 100 copies. And we started just contacting prisons. Most prisons have a chaplain. You literally call the prison, that stuff. The contact information is all on the internet. Call the prison, ask for a chaplain, ask if we can send them a book. So we send them one copy of the book with an intro letter. What do we do? We'd like to make these available to prisoners. Contact us if you're interested. And oh, now you've locked up.
Uh-oh.
Okay, I can hear you.
I might have to
We'll keep
reset
going.
my camera. Yeah, we can keep going as far as the audio goes.
All right. So where are we?
You would contact the chaplain and
That's right. We contacted the chaplain. So we started doing that. And we found out very, very quickly that how sending stuff to prisoners works in Canada is very different than the US. You cannot
Right.
send something to a prisoner in Canada. It all has to go through the chaplain. And not just that, but shipping is crazy expensive in Canada. One copy costs anywhere from say $12 to $18 to ship.
Oh man.
You know what I mean? But a whole box of 25 was about double that. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
So we went from 18 bucks a copy down to maybe $2 a copy
Wow.
to ship it.
Yeah.
And ballpark, of course. And so very quickly we realized, okay, this isn't going to be a per prisoner contact thing. This is going to be more like a send boxes to chaplains and let them distribute at their own discretion. It
Okay.
could be maybe put a few copies in the library, maybe give them out to people as interested. Maybe there's some kind of a, I don't know what, Bible study reward system, or some prisoner says, hey, I've got questions about this and that, chaplain, can you help me out? And he says, sure, read this book. That's their call.
Nice.
And so literally we've just been slowly contacting chaplains. Some of them write back and say, hey, this looks awesome. Will you please send some more? And we start sending them out by the case. So if as a brief timeline here, I was looking through the records of kind of what we purchased. Let's say in 2017, I think we bought about 10 cases of books.
10 cases. And how many did you say in a case?
Back then, 26 in a case. So,
Okay.
250, 260 copies. In 2018, another 10 cases. 2019, 10 cases. And this is all just out of our own pocket. We're not an organization. We've technically chosen a name, but it's not any charitable organization or anything. So then in December of 2020, we were very, very much debating, and I was praying, Lord, we have a little bit of money. We have a few $100s to buy a few cases. Should we buy some, or should we save up more and buy a larger amount? And the Lord is telling me, call them, place the order. So I called them, and then back then there was a fellow by the name of Adam. And Adam says, you know something? How much money do you have to put to this? And we said, well, we'd like to buy these, I don't know, 6 or 8, 10 cases. So I don't know, let's say if it was $1,000. And he says, tell you what, would you be interested in a whole pallet for free? Exactly.
Okay.
And he says, I think, and if my memory serves me right, I think that included getting it shipped here, like on
Wow.
a semi. So just provide us an address and you'll get a pallet. He says, we have a pallet here. We have the resources that we would like to send this up to you. Would you like to take it? Could you use that amount? And I said, yeah, I think we could. So
Nice.
then in January of 21, we received this pallet. And I tell you, we were pretty ecstatic because in a pallet, okay, so in perspective, that was back then 1,100 copies. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, instead of, 100, 150, 200.
That would have costed a lot of money.
Yeah, I think a pallet back then is worth around 7,000 Canadian.
Wow.
And they gave it to us.
Was this Adam Barber by chance?
I believe so.
Okay, I've
It was
talked to him
Barber.
on here as well. So
Yeah, no.
yeah,
And
great guy.
I'll tell you, that's pretty humbling.
Yeah, no
And
kidding.
so that was January. By December, we ordered a pallet for ourselves. And the next March, so March of 22, we ordered 2 pallets. December of 22, we ordered 2 pallets. And then this past April, um, I'm not sure if you heard about this at all, but they not called us, sorry, we got an email saying, you know something, we have a unique opportunity. Our printer says they can get paper on the cheap for like one run. So if we can print them for cheap, we can sell them to you for cheap. How many do you want to buy? You have 36 hours. Yeah. So I contacted some people I knew from church and in the community, and I says, guys, here's the opportunity. Now, to backtrack a little bit, for the last about a year, not maybe more like 2 years by now, we've been, let's say, more in contact with our church body. I go to a church where almost everybody is over 80 years old, a
Okay.
very old church. And just telling them what we do. We're holding a fundraiser. We've had, let's say, 2 fundraisers now. And they're starting to, they really started catching on to what we're actually doing. We're reaching out to these prisons and the impact that we're having on these prisoners. And so these guys at this meeting kind of really took the bull by the horns. And that day, which it was one day, by the end of the day, they said, well, we have enough for, I think they said 10 pallets.
Whoa.
10 pallets between that group of guys. And we were going to buy another 2 pallets. And so we put in an order for 12 pallets of books.
And they were printed a little cheaper because of
And they were, let's say, 40% of typical cost. And by typical, I mean that was the wholesale cost. So I think we're down to $3 a copy.
Wow.
So now suddenly all summer, we're looking forward to 12 pallets of books. And they arrived maybe around October 1st or 2nd.
Okay.
And that was pretty exciting because by then we'd run out for all of summer the 2 pallets we bought. And
How did it start picking up so much? Because you originally were getting rid of about 20 boxes.
well, as we contact more chaplains, more people say, can you send something regularly? Can you send one case a month, once every 2 months? And so they basically go on to a regular shipment. Okay, so during government restriction times, there was this fellow, James Coates, out of Edmonton.
Yep.
He's part of a remand center. Now, as I slowly get in this ministry, I understand how the prison system works a bit more and more. And a remand center is basically a short-term prison where you're held until sentencing or where you serve out sentences that are 2 years or shorter.
Okay.
Short answer, it's a high turnover facility.
So there's a
They have,
lot of guys coming through.
that's right. They have 2,000 guys plus at that facility.
Man.
And we send them 3 cases a month, which is, well, what was it, about 70, 75 copies a month.
Interesting.
And,
And so
and he
the
says,
chaplain's getting busy.
oh yeah. He's busy, and plus we get feedback from these chaplains sometimes, especially in summer when we're running low. They says, hey, we're looking forward to another case. Can you please send us something? We have to write back. He says, you know what, we're out. We're getting some stuff in fall. And they
Hmm.
say, well, we love them. They go like hotcakes. Please send them.
That's awesome.
We once got a thank you card from a facility where a dozen and a half prisoners had signed it, basically with thank yous all over it.
Nice.
I've never seen the guys, but I can impact
Yeah,
a
I mean,
lot.
you still have no personal contact with any of the prisoners.
None at all. Even chaplains, I've never met one. Sometimes we talk to them on the phone, most often through email.
Yeah.
But
Very
actually,
exciting, man. Oh man.
yeah, it is. It
How
is
many?
exciting.
Do you have a number of how many books that you've sent to prisons in Canada?
Oh, I think I could do the quick math here. 10, 20, 30. Oh dear. It would take a little while. Well, if it's got to be 7,000 copies by now.
That's
At least
awesome.
5,000 copies. If that many pallets,
Yeah,
yeah, I would say 5,000 copies.
very nice.
Yeah,
I didn't realize you had done that many already.
I don't think I did either. So right now, for example, we're putting out or sending out maybe about, well, what's the math on this? Down to smaller cases now at times. Now we're sending out just shy of, say, 300 copies a month.
Okay.
And so what we need to do is we need to contact more facilities and set up more relationships and basically finish contacting all the facilities in the country.
All the facilities in the country. What you're sending to most provinces by now already?
I mean, what, half of them?
Okay.
So there's used to be in BC, a lot in Alberta, a few in Saskatchewan, here in Manitoba, a number of in Ontario. Somehow the head chaplain in Ontario got a hold of a copy, and he says,
Okay.
"This is awesome. I'm going to send this. I'm going to tell all my chaplains about this." So suddenly the next week we had four guys, four
Nice.
facilities calling us saying, "Hey, can you send us a copy?" Or
Man, oh man, this this conversation is making me feel very pessimistic. Whenever I
oh,
think of chaplains, whenever I think of prisons, I just think, oh, they're extreme liberals that have no interest in actual biblical truths. The idea of the blood is, I don't know why. I've had that pessimistic mindset where there's almost no
okay.
point in even trying. And you've definitely straightened up my
Many
thinking there.
many of them love the Lord.
That's awesome.
I think they're also, I'm not sure, so I shouldn't speak on this very firmly at all, but there's, because they're speaking to not interreligious, but different religions,
Hmm.
they're maybe supplying religious material to, well, let's say to Muslims, to Buddhists, whatever, as people request. So that's part of their job, but they are also often believers.
Very nice.
So,
So this huge shipment that you just got in October,
yes.
that should take you a little while to get rid of, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, and because of the funds to buy it, then we have the fundraisers. We have the money goes all towards shipping, which is pretty well half the cost. But we have money available to ship it out as well. So it's
Right
in
on.
some ways right now. And see, we don't have a mandate like, oh boy, what happens if we run out of books and people still want to send? Well, it's very simple. If I don't have the money, I can't buy books, or I don't have the money to send out. That's no problem. Just help us out financially, and we'll keep sending out.
Okay. So you
So I
haven't
used
really set up an online giving platform or anything like that yet.
Actually, yes, we are working with a different local ministry called 1613 Ministries,
Okay.
and they're kind of like an umbrella ministry. They have within them a food ministry, a furniture ministry. They help a number of can't think of the word evangelists and so on in different countries doing work. And they've said if you come on with us, we'll take us. And then if you come on with us, people can give through the website, and we'll pass it on to you. And so they take a small administrative fee for that, but through that, then people can give through their website. Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe maybe I even have it in one of the emails. I don't know, but share it with me again, and I'll post it
Sure.
on the YouTube channel there as
Sure.
well. So
Well,
that is
we and
really
we
cool.
have a Facebook page which we don't update often enough, but we try to let people know what's going on and so on. And something I'm actually quite interested in telling you about. Hold on, I gotta get it. Okay, so JD was talking about their whole iMissionaries program and their whole good and evil is online thing, which is fantastic because, like he says, here you can give to people in totally closed nations the gospel in good and evil. I
Hmm.
don't mean good and evil's version of the gospel. I mean the gospel in this comic book form, and a format which on their smartphone is used for all kinds of, smartphones used for all kinds of things. And here's a great thing that can be used for, which is people reading the gospel in secret on their phone
That's right.
in these nations. And they have translated that into, well, what are they at, 50 plus languages right now. And I think JD was saying they're working on, what, a dozen more or something.
Yep.
And so we have a lot of immigrants in our community. And a lot of these guys work in manufacturing and so on. And we thought, you know what is very comforting is not the right word. I don't know what the right word is, but very wonderful is when you're in a new place and with a foreign language, and then you see something in your own language,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you gravitate to it. And so we were thinking, you know what? Good and evil is in all these languages. And there's something called a QR code. You know what a QR code
Yeah,
is?
yeah,
Yeah. So what happens if they could scan a QR code that takes them to good and evil straight in their language?
yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, so then we came up with this. This is our good and evil
Nice.
poster. And so we have on here Arabic and English, and I can't remember what this one is, but all these languages that are fairly common that people, let's say you put this up in a coffee room at a
They'll
wherever,
recognize it right away. Yeah.
exactly, and suddenly maybe they can't read any of this or very little bit, but suddenly bang, it says Portuguese in Portuguese. I know that.
Nice.
And so they scan it and it goes straight to good and evil in Portuguese. And I have no idea. I think it'd be pretty cool. So JD's got this little map on their website of like hits per week, like
Yeah.
their top nations for the week. I've been thinking it'd be pretty cool if I could get Canada, to
Yeah.
500 hits a week because people are scanning posters. And you know something? I have no problem with, if people want to contact us for a copy of this poster and they can get it printed at their local Staples or office shop
Mm-hmm.
and put up posters. That's, it's just a JPEG. I send you an image and you can make a poster.
Absolutely.
We make up little cards as well, little index cards with a QR code. I give them out on the street or to people in business I meet or foreigners at the local Indian food supply store. Um, and I'd like to get into stickers, car stickers,
Yep.
maybe like a little good and evil logo and the QR code, and just put that on the car because it's free advertising in whatever parking lot you're in. I don't have to be standing there telling people, it's just
That is
there.
so neat. Like you don't have to recreate this each time you're trying to share with somebody, right? It's like it's there, it's handy, it's ready to go.
That's right. That's right.
Really
So,
neat.
so yeah, we're pretty excited about it and just the potential of being able to share that gospel. And I don't have to put miles on the car or on the plane traveling to prisons. I can do this all here.
Yeah.
It's scalable too. If people wanted to help, and I had, let's say, help in East Coast, West Coast, whatever, and it got to the point where I could ship a whole pallet to you,
Yeah.
you could handle that, and because postage would be cheaper from you to a local facility than from me halfway across the nation, and you would handle, let's say, the shipping and those logistics from there,
Yep.
that'd be great. I mean, it can happen all just phone, email, that kind of thing.
I can see it being
Oh,
pretty straightforward. I mean, you've got the ball rolling now, and you can fill in the blanks, teaching people how to go about it and everything. So,
yeah, yeah.
really neat.
But I don't have much contact across the nation, so
Okay, well, hopefully this
yeah,
will help a little bit. I've got connections kind of throughout the provinces now. Maybe not
sure.
so much East Coast, but Alberta, Canada, or Alberta, Ontario, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan quite a bit.
Right.
Excuse me.
Well,
You're
go
sorry. Go
ahead.
ahead.
What is very interesting is so part of this big pallet order that we placed, JD said, you know what, I have other people who bought a few pallets in Canada, and we'd like to put them on the same container and ship them straight to Canada. Do you think you could handle getting the rest of the pallets shipped out to these other recipients or other buyers? And so through that, there were a few other people, and there are other people who have their own good and evil ministry. There's some people who
Okay.
are ministering to local, let's say, Mennonite populations. I think a guy said his local Hutterite community was they're not evangelizing within the community. They, as a community, had evangelism and street evangelism work that they were handing out books.
Wow.
And one guy is giving them to local Native populations. And yeah,
And
so
they
there's.
have it in that native language already, or is just in English
I
now?
don't think so. No,
Well, most here would speak in English, right?
they would, and I know I've asked. Some people have asked, can we get it in translated into this local native language? And like JD says, it's got to be a fair, not a major language, but something where there's going to be a fair amount of people
Yeah.
who can read it.
Well,
There's also someone, yeah.
interestingly enough, about probably 2 months ago, he sent me the original kind of unedited version of the Low German. So there
Oh
is
yeah,
a full work being done with the Plotdeutsch version of it. So
right
it'd
on.
be really neat to have that.
Yeah, yeah. So right
Excellent.
now we're actually looking for a little bit of help as well. what we need is a database to be able to keep track of all of basically our activities of when we send stuff to facilities and when we have requests come in, just to be able to handle it all.
Okay.
And I'd love to hook up with someone who could do some database programming to build something for us.
Okay. So somebody
So
who's a little bit more on the techie side of things.
a bit of something like that. So, if somebody's watching this, I'd appreciate a call.
Absolutely. No, that'd be great.
So,
You have a wife, obviously, but I didn't hear anything about children. Do you have some children there too, then?
yes, we have 3 kids entering adolescence,
Okay.
and they help out too
I
when
was
it's
just
time
gonna
to
say
shape
they
up
can get
boxes.
involved with some of this.
Yeah, yeah, and they love helping with the fundraisers. Every spring we run a pierogi and sausage fundraiser in the community, and it's fun to see friends and family come to a fundraiser and be interested in the work, not just, let's say, coming to help us out, but also, let's say, see the ministry work and be
Yeah.
excited about that too.
So it's no longer all coming out of your pocket now. It's starting to the money's starting to roll in a little bit better.
In that sense, yes, yeah,
Very
and it's
nice.
humbling because how do you ask for money? Like it's
This is
and
your
it's
vision, right?
you're right, but at the same time, it's the gospel, and we get to share
That's
that.
right.
It's like JD says, I have no idea who I'm going to meet in heaven from
Yeah.
Pakistan or Afghanistan, whatever. That my work in Tennessee contributed to their eternal salvation,
Amen.
and so we all get to take part in that in various ways.
And then to be able to get your own children involved with it too, right? Your
Yeah,
primary work is them, but then they get
that's
to
right.
help with this. That's awesome.
That's right.
Very nice. Trying to think, was there anything else? I mean, you've given us a whole lot to think about.
I have, yeah. Sorry, I don't mean to fire through it, but that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
Your church group, you said they're mostly older folks. They're pretty involved now too. Then they're excited to see what's happening.
Yeah, they're excited too because it's a way that they can get involved in a ministry, that type of thing, or it's exciting to see new work, new blood, that type of thing, of people going out and try to spread the gospel message. And they also see the potential of it. And we have many asking us, can I buy a copy for my grandkids or something
Mm-hmm.
like that? And we say for sure. And so we actually sell copies and use that as a fundraising venue as well. Because let's say if they buy a copy, then the amount of profit we can make on that can send 2 or 3 copies to a prisoner. So they're giving a copy to their grandchild, and the same purchase price sends 2 or 3 copies off to someone else in Canada as well.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, really? No, that's really well thought through. I appreciate that.
Thank you. So we'll keep growing. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah. No, I'm really hoping that people will actually seek you out and get a hold of you online, and maybe this thing can continue to grow more than you'd think, right? I mean, it's
Sure.
already expanded past what you had originally thought it would, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So if people wanted to contact, we're at Gospel Equipment Ministries at protonmail.com. And we are also on Facebook if people want to check that out and contact us through that.
Okay.
And we'll see what the Lord has for this yet.
Amen. Oh, I'm excited. The Good and Evil book was pretty cool to first stumble across, because to me, growing up, it was kind of taboo to even have pictures of Jesus a little bit. Although my
Okay.
parents had these picture Bible books that
Hmm.
I read through again and again as a boy, so I was familiar with the stories of the Bible because of those books. But when it was in comic version, it almost felt a little bit like you were degrading something, right?
It was sacrilegious,
Yeah.
or like you say,
But amazing how many people, even though they kind of have that mentality, as soon as they see it, they can't help but look at it. They want to
yeah,
see what's this about, right? And then the gospel is kind of the theme of that whole book, right? Obviously, not all the Bible stories are in there, but he kind of builds it along that theme of let's present the blood, the gospel, the death, burial, resurrection, and it's a theme throughout.
that's right. And it's fairly graphic.
Yeah.
Like you've got pictures of, I don't know, have you read the whole thing?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I mean, yeah, these pictures of these leopards, that's not a nice physical condition there. They
No,
look
that's right.
pretty rotten.
But
Jezebel gets
it's
thrown out the window, she hits the ground and the dogs eat her.
the dogs eat nothing
You
left but
know,
hands.
yeah, it's there.
Yep.
So
And
yeah,
that's, I mean, the Bible is pretty graphic too if you read it throughout the Old Testament, right?
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Right on, man. I appreciate meeting you and you're spending time with us. Hopefully, this will be a blessing to you and a glory to God, right?
Otherwise, it's all wasted. Yes,
Amen.
that's what we're looking for.
Right on.
Thanks for everything. It's good to meet you and good to speak about this.
Likewise, we'll have you in our minds.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
See you, Mark.
Bet.